Hello, my name's Graham Morgan. Today we're at Jean's Bothy for the Comfort and Disturb podcast. Jean's Bothy is a mental health and wellbeing hub in Helensburgh and Argyll. And today we're talking to Elinor. Elinor is going to be talking about the wonder and comfort and disturbing nature of writing and reading. And I'm really looking forward to speaking with her. But first, Elinor, can you tell us about you? Who are you? How did you find out about here? What sort of a person are you?
What sort of a person? I started coming to Jean's Bothy about a year and a half ago, I think. I was brought up in England but born in Scotland, but I have lived a lot of my adult life abroad. I came back in 2000 to spend time with my mum, really, because I'm an only child, and the only child goes a little bit into the reading and writing thing as well. So I think as a child, when I came down to England from Scotland, I had effectively sort of missed a year of school because they start school later in England, what they do in Scotland. So I was in the special needs group, if you like, because I didn't know my alphabet or anything. So my parents were very keen if I showed an interest in anything at all, comics or whatever, that was to do with reading. They were very keen to get me reading. And once I started reading, that was what I did, a lot of my leisure time. So they encouraged that. And then also I started writing then, probably when I was about 7 or 8. And my mum would read the stories and say, well, you need paragraphs or something. And I think that what reading and writing gives you as you're growing up is like the idea of ordering your thoughts. And I think I forgot that for a while and stopped writing. Don't think I've ever stopped reading, but stopped writing so much. And now I've come back to it at Jean's Bothy because I attend the writing therapy group. Writing can be creative or therapeutic or whatever you want it to be, of course. It's not necessarily, you don't need to think of it as being a therapy necessarily. But I would want to encourage other people to write and to read.
So what, on the subject of reading, what do you get out of reading? What does it give to you?
Well, I think it is a very comforting thing. If you have to spend time waiting for anything, or if you are needing to be alone, it gives you really another world to escape to. And your imagination, of course, is much more effective than somebody else's interpretation in a film of any given theme. And you may or may not be thinking along the same lines as the person who wrote the book, but that doesn't matter. It's just a prompt to make you think about your life, and maybe sometimes to escape from thinking about your problems, to be somewhere else and thinking about something else, and comparing other people's experiences to your own in order to understand your own experiences better.
And sometimes escape is important, and sometimes understanding is important, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd say so.
And the value of writing?
The value of writing, I think, and I've come back to it again, starting to write a lot more myself, is that I don't particularly like writing on a keyboard. I like to write with a pen because I feel like I start to write and it's like your thoughts become ordered. And as you write it down, sometimes it changes from what you first started off thinking you were going to write. And it makes you realise how you really feel about things. I think in a conversation, sometimes, like I was saying to you earlier, I'll go away and I'll think, oh, I know what I should have said now. I don't really have time to process it in conversation, whereas if I'm writing something, it makes me think more clearly.
So about communication, really, isn't
About
it?
communicating, yeah, absolutely. And sometimes I will think that I've neglected to say to somebody how I felt about something they did for me or something they said to me or support that they gave me. And I like to write that down because I want to be sure that they've understood from my non-verbal clues or from just a casual thank you remark just how much I do appreciate what they did. So I like to write a lot.
So writing is almost a formal recognition of something sometimes.
Yeah. Yes, I think so.
Huh? So, this bit, you've travelled and lived abroad a considerable amount of your life. And I'm really interested in your experience living in another country as a foreigner and communicating and writing about that. Can you tell us about this, especially your time in Japan where you're using writing and communication together?
I mean, I think when I first arrived in Japan, I had lived abroad before, and I was very confident that I'd very easily learn Japanese. And of course, you can't very easily learn any language, but especially not Japanese. So for the first year, I spent a lot of time with the other expatriates, English teachers like myself, who mostly spent their time complaining about being in Japan and the Japanese culture. And it was quite negative. So when I started making Japanese friends and becoming interested in actually properly learning the language, which meant learning the characters as well, because like you'll have seen on a Chinese restaurant menu, Japanese also has Japanese characters. It made me realise that actually language, speaking to somebody who's Japanese or from any other country, but in their own language, is quite different from speaking English. Because I myself, or anybody speaking a foreign language, you are not going to say the same things or do the same things as you would in your own country, because the culture and language are tied up together, really. And in Japanese, the characters, and Chinese, the characters aren't like words in a dictionary. They are a concept or an idea, and the ideas come together. So the whole way of thinking about things is completely different. So although it was a lot of effort to learn Japanese, I don't really think that I experienced the culture or got to know the people until I did speak Japanese properly. So I think it's very unfortunate that in these days of AI and computing, which there are a lot of benefits of as well, people are going to stop learning languages, just as people have stopped reading books as a hobby quite as much as they did before. Because you've come to a point where you don't need to sit down and spend the time learning lists of vocabulary or learning how to put a sentence together and the grammar that goes with it. But the value in doing that was that you get the culture and you get an insight into how the language and how the people actually work that you don't get from just pressing a button on Google Translate.
I'm fascinated by this because it's something I don't understand at all, because my grasp of other languages is more or less zero. But it sounds like you almost become a different person when you're speaking a different language. So there's a whole transformation when you enter into a different culture. Is that right?
Because when you first start learning a language, any language, when you're in school, you are automatically you're translating the sentence from your own language to the language. I would like a cup of tea. I would like a cup of tea. But when you are living in the country and you are immersed in the language, you don't go through your own language. You simply have the idea which you express in the language. So because you're in a different culture, you wouldn't say the same things as you would if you were English. Are you with me? And likewise, if you were speaking to a Japanese person and you don't speak Japanese, they're speaking English, that's not their true self, really, is it?
So
that's them speaking English.
Are you almost a different person when you're in a different country?
And I
when
think,
you're part of that culture?
Absolutely. I don't think, in Japan at the time, it was 2000 when I left there, so I'm not sure that it's still like that. You men in a restaurant would not go to the buffet bar. It's the ladies that go to the buffet bar and bring everything and serve everybody. And I did that too, even though I probably wouldn't do that here. But that's their way, and I'm a great believer if in Rome, then also, you should be acting like a Roman.
So I was thinking about that. It's because you were talking about AI and its threat, and I've never really quite understood it, but it's almost as though it's creating one culture throughout the world, an attack on other cultures. Is that what you're getting at?
Yes, I think so. I didn't realise that till we started talking about it, which is the value
of discussion.
Of discussion. But I think, yes, everything becomes not so dramatic. Everything becomes very similar, doesn't it? I mean, there's an advert that I've seen a few times, probably on a YouTube, where somebody goes into a Korean restaurant and instead of ordering, they just give their phone over and they get their noodles or whatever. And I thought, yeah, obviously you're getting what you want, but that's not the same as going to the country like I did, going to China, for example, where I didn't speak the language, and going into a restaurant and drawing pictures or writing Japanese characters or going into the kitchen and ordering. That was an experience. That was engaging
in a way.
That was me engaging with the person. It's almost like it becomes a barrier to communication to me. If you're not going to, and there's not a lot of effort involved. There's not a lot of using your mind and your intellect either, because in order to learn a language or maths, you also won't need to do any calculations. You don't need to do long division. You haven't since we had a calculator, I suppose, but these days, even complex mathematical things, AI is going to be far, far, far superior. So where do we go with education? How do you learn to think and consider things and talk about things and communicate with people if it's all done for you?
Yeah.
Are you with me?
Yeah. And in terms of that, going on a wee tangent, but really essential to what we're talking about, doing things ourselves is what we do at the Creative Writing Group.
Absolutely,
the Writing.
Yeah, exactly.
So tell us about that group.
So the group is, the guy who runs it, Callum, is absolutely fantastic. He will come with a theme. And the theme is very broad, and nobody minds if you don't write about that. The idea is it's things to make you think about something, experiences in your life, or poetic thoughts or images, and you write about them. So he will give some, often has some works of art, sometimes has some poetry or pieces of writing that we read, and we discuss the theme, and the conversation can go anywhere, and it doesn't matter where it goes. And then we'll all write, and we'll all have taken something completely different from the conversation. And then, if you want to, you can read out what you've written. If you don't, it doesn't matter. And then you will hear other people's feedback. Now, often if I write for myself, you unfortunately don't get the feedback, and having the feedback from other people, what it makes somebody else think about, again, deepens the experience of what you've written, and again makes you consider things. And if you are talking about something that was a rather negative experience, it's cathartic as well, because it makes you think, yes, that wasn't a very good time in my life, but I learned this, and now I'm doing this, and I've moved on. So either way, it's a very comforting experience to write about.
I must admit, I love going to the Creative Writing Group. I don't go as much as I should, but I really do love going. Writing can also be a gift. You were telling me once about going away at Christmas to a country house and how you wrote as a gift to one of your friends.
Yes, that was back to the idea of sometimes we don't communicate very well just through saying things, I feel like. And we had gone to this country house in Yorkshire, and it was a sort of Christmas lights show whereby you walked around the garden, and then there were these various installations where there was a tunnel of lights. The trees were all lit up in the garden. They were sometimes synchronized with the music and so on, and it was kind of magical, And as I was walking round, at one point, I just stood stock still and looked at what they were doing, and I was lost for words, and my friend filmed me. And then she sent me the film, and I thought, yes, you've reminded me that there's always a new good experience you can have. Just because just right now you might not be feeling very positive about things, there's always a light. And I thought, I don't think I've said to her that I think that's the greatest gift I had over the Christmas period was that thought. So I do actually write to her a lot because I think we both. She also enjoys writing, and we both like to just put ideas down in writing just on WhatsApp or something. So I wrote and thanked her, and I thought, now I want her to know that was a really big thing. And I think it's not as much just having a Skype call and saying, oh yeah, I love you and this is really wonderful, is not the same as writing it down. So in the olden days, if you like, when people had corresponded, a pen friend, if you like Dr. Boswell, and I forget who he wrote to, but there's a massive series of letters between writers or intellects or whatever. That's a bit deeper, really, isn't it? It's a deeper form of communication. And I think in some ways, it's a shame that we're going away from that. And certainly, as an English teacher, I do notice that the standard of English, when people have to write advertising something on Gumtree or whatever, is terrible compared to when we all read, and when we all no, we didn't all read, but a lot more people did read as a hobby previously when I was growing up and was an adult, as read now.
Yeah. And
writing is even more obscure than it was perhaps before. I mean, I remember writing postcards to when I did interrails and things when I was in my teens to my parents. I'm sitting in St Mark's Square and this is what I'm having to drink, and the most fantastic thing I did yesterday was this, and and there's a picture of wherever it was, and they used to love receiving them, and I loved looking back on them 25, 30 years later when I saw them and remembered that time.
It makes such a difference, doesn't it?
It does. It's a record, and it reminds you of how lucky. It always reminds me if I ever find anything like that, because I'm a bit of a hoarder, so I do find things like that sometimes. It always reminds me, well, gosh, how lucky have I been?
And I was thinking, in the Bothy, many of us have experienced hugely disturbing events in our lives.
Yeah.
And writing, we don't necessarily write about all those, but sometimes using writing to talk about some of the harder things becomes an act of positivity in a way.
I have a very concrete example of that. I happened to come to the writing group the day after my elderly but much beloved cat had passed away. So I ended up writing about that and writing about all the years we'd shared together and getting a lot of comfort from the other people in the group and sympathy, and them talking about pets they'd loved and lost and so on. And it was just a tremendous relief to have written about it.
Yeah.
And to be grateful for the time we'd had together, which isn't the same as just thinking about it or talking to somebody about how much you miss them. It's not the same, because you can't clarify your thoughts as much as if you write it down.
Thank you. Yeah. And last question. If someone wants to write, but they're worried about it, because I know so many people who would love to write, but they think, I can't write, I've got no skill. What would you say to them, either if they want to come to the Jeans Bothy group or go to another group or just want to write for themselves?
Well, it doesn't get marked, Nobody's looking at your spelling, nobody cares. It's the exchange of ideas that's important. And people who've maybe never tried writing, I would encourage them to just have a go. You might come along and you might not feel like you want to write anything, but you've enjoyed the conversation, and you perhaps got some comments to make on something somebody else has written. It's a very, very easygoing group, and I'm sure you could maybe find a group somewhere else near you if you don't happen to be from this area. I just would encourage people to see if you can get something out of it, because I've had a lot of it out of it all my life, and I sort of just want to bang the drum that people ought to read more and write more, and they will get a lot of it. If you are a parent and you encourage your children to read anything, I think you will always find that they do well at school, because they write better, they clarify their thoughts better, whatever they're doing. So let's not lose reading and writing.
Thank you so much. That was absolutely wonderful. You've been listening to Elinor talk about writing and reading and other cultures and a whole host of things. It's been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's us for today. Do tune in next time for another podcast.